Hello Giants fans, welcome to Giants Baseball 101. I'm Gabe Vaughn, your host. We do have a question today. I will get to it, don't worry, I have not forgotten you. But first, I want to go over the takeaways from the Giants game. They lost to the Reds 7-3 today. Clearly the Giants are not winning games. Their record is only 3 wins and 9 losses, and I don't necessarily think this is a reason to panic. Honestly, I expect the Giants to be at least decent when the season starts, assuming that there aren't going to be any disasters. None of their players that we're kind of counting on are going to perform significantly below the level of performance we expect from them. So as long as none of those disasters happen, I do expect the Giants to be decent when the season starts. So at least as of right now, I'm not going to panic over the Giants' current results. Kyle Harrison started and went 1.2 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, so it's the second consecutive bad pitching appearance for him. And according to my understanding, he's expected to contribute to the Giants in the big leagues soon in 2023. But honestly, if he's not ready for that level yet, I don't think that the Giants would have anything to gain from pushing him there ahead of the proper pace. If he isn't ready for the big leagues, then they shouldn't call him up. And again, it's just not like we know everything yet. I mean, there's a ton of spring training left. Could be next start he'll pitch 4 innings and strike out 7. I really have no idea. But if this streak kind of continues with Harrison, then that's probably going to wave a red flag. It might kind of put a red light in the way of just bringing Harrison up to the big leagues. And I wouldn't be too eager to get him up there for, expecting the quality that he was drafted for, because if he's already made clear that he's not ready to produce that yet, then the Giants wouldn't have anything to gain. It would just be a disappointment. So I don't know how things are going to turn out with him, but they definitely don't want to rush him or really any other of their top prospect to the big leagues. And I'm not panicking over Harrison. I'm not saying they never should have drafted him or he's going to be a failure or anything. Not at all. I don't think that the Giants could have kept up such high hopes for him so long if he wasn't. I think he does have a good chance of being great in the majors someday. I think it's just an issue of the schedule for him and when's the best time to break him in. It should be done easily, even if, honestly, he is ready for the majors but just not ready to start games. It might be good to put him in a low-leverage bullpen role where he's pitching multiple innings, but maybe going like every 4 or 5 days and just pitching the low-leverage innings of the game. That could be another way to break him into it. So whether in the minors or as a long reliever in the big leagues. And the Giants were using Sean Jelly as basically a long reliever, although in his case, last year, he was pitching behind an opener, so he was kind of carrying the brunt of the game there. But in Harrison's case, I don't think he should be pitching in critical situations unless he has proven what he really needs to prove. And there's still time for him, but Giants are just going to have to monitor that. Tristan Beck pitched 2 scoreless innings, so good for him. And the Rogers brothers both got some work in out of the bullpen. Casey Schmidt had 2 hits today, including a triple. His bat is just coming along fine this spring training. Probably don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, count chickens before they hatch with him, because this is just spring training and it's not like he's facing full-fledged major league pitching every at bat yet, but all the same, the Giants should be excited about the progress he's making, and it's looking more and more like it's not at all just a small sample size for him, but that he really is showing something off in spring training. And if he continues this, he really would be a good shot to make the opening day roster. I think the main prohibitive thing with him would be just simply that there wasn't a starting role for him, and in order to keep him hot, keep him from cooling off, he needed to get at bats in AAA rather than sit on the bench in the big leagues. I think if it's not for that, he's making the opening day roster. That's the thing the Giants are just going to have to decide. Like I've mentioned before, it can be different for different players, but to me, that's going to be the deciding issue on whether he can make the roster. It's just carving out a starting role for him is the thing that might be kind of difficult for the Giants in their case. But we'll see. Okay, now I want to get to the question, who's the best batter on the Giants, in your opinion? Well, that's a great question, particularly since the Giants have talent that's spread out. You know, they've got a bunch of average to good players. It's good, but very few guys who have serious chances of being greats for the Giants in 2023. But they've got depth in pretty much every area of their roster, and that's something that can't really be ignored. So I wish I could say the best batter was Aaron Judge, Carlos Correa, or Trey Turner. But those guys are gone, and we might as well let it go. The Giants have to play with what they have. Now, as far as the guys they've got on their current roster, what's going to be the roster in 2023, who's the best batter? And I think we do need to be careful about looking at a guy like Casey Schmidt and saying, oh, he's just killing it in spring training. It's going to be him. Casey Schmidt's going to be the best batter in 2023. I think we kind of need to be careful of that because this is spring training and we haven't seen him on a purely major league roster playing in regular season games yet. So I think it is possible that he's taking advantage of weaker pitching. And it's certainly good performance in the minors too. It's not a guarantee of good performance in the majors, but it can be promising. So they're different. There's a transition into full-fledged major league playing, but doesn't mean what you see at lower levels isn't promising. How much to infer in big league spring training? Well, obviously, carries more weight as spring training goes on. And I haven't heard yet about the Giants making any roster cuts. They may have. It's just not something that I've heard about this time. Other teams, not so sure about that, like how it's going to narrow down. But I'm not going to just come out and project Schmidt to be the Giants' best hitter until he proves that. He hasn't had a major league at bat in a regular season game yet, so he's going to have to prove that first. So that's the thing to be careful about. But the Giants, seems like they're planning for Joc Pederson to be their best player offensively. The evidence of that, number one, they signed him to a 1-year, $20 million deal. And think about how that is in proportion to his 2022 salary of $6 million. Well, it's 3 times as much. So the Giants are putting quite a bit of faith in Joc Pederson. And it's amazing what one breakout season can do for a guy. I mean, 2020, 2021, I would say that those years were not great for Pederson, but he really broke out in 2022, and he was selected to the All-Star game. And it's just amazing. Sometimes it's a guy going to play overseas, in the KBO or in Japan, wherever. There have been instances where just 1 or 2 good seasons overseas have, for a player who'd struggled in the majors before that they've made a team sign into a pretty good contract. But yeah, other times it's just a guy, whether it's because of making adjustments, adjusting his approach, or whether it's approach or mechanics or whatever adjustments the guy's making, he manages to have a breakout season in the big leagues. That can do a whole ton for him, and it seems to be the case here with Joc Pederson. The Giants signing him to a $20 million deal. Now, how much can and should we infer from Pederson's 2022 season? Well, I don't know. So I think there's a good chance that he'll be great in 2023. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I think it's an intriguing possibility. There was definitely a risk the Giants took in signing him to this deal. Sometimes you've got to take risks. Of course, the Giants were desperate to keep their roster in shape, and I think at this point losing Pederson would have been a blow. And to me, I think the Giants are planning on him being their best hitter, and he's kind of maybe the unwritten candidate to do it. I mean, they also signed Mitch Haniger and Michael Conforto to some pretty big contracts. The difference, of course, is that Pederson's expected to be their primary DH. Now, I have heard talk about like Mitch Haniger playing the DH spot sometimes, but the Giants, I mean, and that thing with Haniger getting at bats in the DH spot, I think that was only supposed to be if the Giants plan to rotate. But one player in one day, another player the next, if they plan to rotate the DH spot to give players a partial day off. Let me just say, whatever people try to tell you, the DH spot is to keep your worst defensive players off the field. That's just what it is. And defense has been such a concern for the Giants. And it's been such a priority in their minds to improve it in 2023 that if they're smart, they're not going to rotate the DH spot. And Joc Pederson, a guy who's good with the bat, not so much in the outfield, he'd be a good guy to bat in that spot. And according to my understanding, that's the plan. So, he was signed this deal, and it was for his bat. And so as far as just a pure hitter on the team, that's kind of what they expect out of him. So what we should infer from one breakout season, I mean, I completely understand that the risk involved, it is a risk, obviously, the Giants had to take at this point. So, Pederson, I mean, and not just as a platoon player either, I don't think that it'd be satisfactory for him to just be good against right-handed pitching. Mike Yastrzemski, I think we could get by if he was showing off his power against right-handed pitching, even if he was having a few issues against left-handed pitching. But Pederson, it's pretty evident just from the Giants signing him to that kind of a contract that they expect him to be good against both. And I think that's what he's going to have to be in order for us to be able to say the Giants lived up to expectations and projections. So I would say that's where things stand. But yeah, I mean, they've got guys like Michael Conforto. He missed the 2022 season due to injury, so we're going to have to see how he comes back. But it'd be really good for the Giants if at least he could produce an above average performance. They signed him to 2 years, $36 million, so it's clear that they're hopeful he'll show something of what he used to be. So as far as an answer to this question, I really wouldn't count on a prospect emerging as the Giants' best hitter this season, unless it's a guy who's already proved himself in the majors like David Villar. It's a much better guess, a much better bet to make that David Villar would be the best than to say that Casey Schmidt would be the best. Still, I'm going to go with Joc Pederson as far as the guy I think. And I know it's kind of difficult, probably difficult for you to differentiate what I'm saying. Like, am I just saying, I hope this guy will be good enough, I can say it, or I really think that he's going to be the best. And there are so many unknowns. We don't know if this season will be, what this season will be, what it will hold for the Giants, if they're just going to kill it, or if they're going to be in a slump. There are so many unknowns, but I think that in an ideal world, if they start this season well, then it'll be Joc Pederson who's really doing the most for the Giants with the bat. And if they had some disasters, if they had a slump, I don't know who the best would be. If the best hitter was just average anyway and all the others were below average, I have no idea who that would be, and I don't think that's what we're trying to find out here. The Giants are planning for better than that this year. So if things go right with the roster, I'm going to go with Joc Pederson to, do the most with the bat, and probably the bat in the cleanup spot too. Brandon Crawford, I really can't say as much for him as I would like to. He's a veteran player who's definitely past his prime. And we just there room for a breakout season? I think it depends on what you mean by that. I mean, Evan Longoria, as old as he was performing pretty well for the Giants in both 2021 and 2022. I just don't expect that to continue as he nears 40. Crawford, though, his wins above replacement is, at least it's nearing zero. I don't know offhand what it is, but he's definitely past his best years here. So I think it'd be a lot more reliable to project Pederson, and I think it would be disastrous definitely if Pederson fell into a slump for the Giants. So the point is they've got a bunch of hitters who are not going to be bad. I don't think they're going to be bad. And definitely guys who you can say against their opposite hand we expect to be good. Like Wilmer Flores, how good should the Giants expect him to be? Well, I think that against left-handed pitching at least, we can probably reasonably expect to see something and should be able to. By this I mean it'd be a serious problem if he wasn't. So the platoon guys, Wilmer Flores, Mike Yastrzemski as a lefty against right-handed pitching, and maybe Mitch Haniger. I believe he bats left-handed. I'm sorry that I forgot that. He might be another kind of platoon bat. What we could say about Lamont Wade Jr. justifiably, I just don't know right now if he can come back to really being good against right-handed pitching. It would be really nice, really good if he could. But as far as the guy that could carry it against both left and right-handed pitching, in an ideal world, to me, that's Joc Pederson. So I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-ups or anything that needs to be clarified, just say so. I don't mind. And I think that that's pretty much all for today. I'm very interested to see how those World Baseball Classic games will turn out. That's just a pretty neat thing. And Logan Webb, it's kind of too bad that he's not pitching in it. Scott Kazmir, if he was still with the Giants, he'd welcome the opportunity. Definitely pitched for USA in the Olympics, so if he were with the Giants, I don't think he would have made the same choice as Logan Webb, but I think these games will be good. Thank you for watching. This has been Giants Baseball 101. Please subscribe if you haven't. Any more questions or comments, please keep them coming. I'll see you next time on Giants Baseball 101.